And then we just, since you're up, we'll go, now that you're down, but we go up and prop open the door. Okay, so we're gonna figure out how much we're going to throw, and I don't know what we're gonna do. I'm gonna try to do this for about 40 minutes and cover some things on that sheet. Who are the new, so you haven't been on the wheel yet. Have you been on the wheel? And have you been on the wheel? Okay. So again, when I give you criteria, it's gonna look different. For some of you who haven't been on the wheel or haven't been on it in a long time, that criteria is gonna be to explore. For those of you who feel more comfortable on the wheel, the criteria is also to explore, but different, bigger shapes. So if you wanna write this down, and you're gonna spend at least 2 days practicing on the wheel. That's over the next Tuesday and Thursday, and probably the next Monday after that, and maybe the next Wednesday. You're going to help each other. So you're going to talk to each other and help each other and guide each other. You're going to explore shapes and forms. And then you're going to save at least 3 things so we can practice trimming. Oh, you made it.
Yeah, right during the lockdown feels great.
There's a note-taking sheet right there. So you can save at least forms so we can practice trimming. So as we get closer to the end, that Monday, Wednesday, we'll talk about trimming. And then remember on our free-form projects what the requirements are. So before I sit down, right here and right there, as I'm throwing, if you guys want to take these stools down so you can see better, that'd be awesome. As I'm throwing, you could come up, and I'll just leave some of these markers here and over there, and you can come up here and write down some ideas, so I can see what you're going for. You can do it now, you can do it afterwards, whatever. I just like to see those. There's that. I'll throw this one right there. I want to see what you want to make. And we can call that out right now as well as we go through the basics. So have you been on the wheel before? Okay. So not all of this is brand new. I'm going to start out with 1.5 pounds-ish of clay, which is about half of one of these chunks. So from over here. And so super quickly, there are 6 variables, and then there's some basic steps, and the steps change depending on what we're doing. But the first of the variables are wheel speed. We need to know what our wheel's doing. How fast you're going to spin it, how slow you're going to spin it, what direction it's going, okay? The next variable is water content. And you want to know how much or little water. Now when I put my clay down, I don't put water down. I make sure it's fairly dry. I know some potters put water down, but I think it's sure it's fairly dry, and I pat that into place. So wheel speed and water content. The next variable is body position. Where's your body at? Where are your arms at? What are they doing and why? So the stool comes all the way up. My elbows get locked into my hips, into my rib cage. I like to push my pedal further away. I don't like to be standing right on top of it. So I push it far away. That way when I get it going, I'm not going from 0 to 60. So wheel speed, water content, body position, and then pressure. What kind of pressure and where? So right now I got that padded down. I'm gonna add some water. My wheel's gonna go a medium speed. My elbows are locked in, that's my body position. My hands are in this little eagle form. I'm gonna push straight down and wrap my pinkies around to seal it. That's the second step. I didn't tell you what the first step was. But the first step is to get your clay and measure it out, whatever that looks like for you. For practicing, it literally is wedging it, cutting it in half, and that should be good. If I'm making bowls, soup cereal bowls, I use 1.7 pounds of clay every time because I know my bowls are going to be pretty similar in shape and size. So I wedge that up, I cut it out, and I weigh it. So wheel speed, water content, body position, pressure, and then know your steps. So cut your clay. So the fifth variable is know your steps. Cut your clay, seal your clay, that's the second step. And sealing means that at the bottom there's no gaps or shadows. And if you get it and it's good, but you're like, maybe it's not all the way sealed, you can just use your finger and press inward. And that's nice and sealed. If it's not sealed, and we add water and then add pressure to it, it's going to hydroplane, it's going to lift it up, and we don't want that. So wheel speed, water content, body position, pressure, know your steps. So the third step is coning. When we cone, my body position, my elbow is locked into my hip and my rib cage, my left arm is pushing at 7 o'clock. If you don't know the time of the clock, 12 is up top, 6 down here, 5 on my right, 7 on my left. Are there any lefties in here? No? Okay. And then 1 o'clock. So you're going to need to know 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 and 7. That's kind of where we hang out, in that range. We never come way over here. All right, so I'm going to come in here. I'm going to push at 7. My elbows locked into place, and as I push, it starts to lift. Also, the clay starts to dry out, so I need to make sure I add water. I come on the other side. My knuckles are at about 1 o'clock. So I'm going to push at 7 into my knuckles at 1 o'clock. I'm going to squeeze, lift, and roll. More pressure at the bottom, medium pressure in the middle, light pressure at the top. Also, when I first start squeezing, my hands are going to be kind of pushed like this because I can get a lot of pressure. But as I lift, if I keep that same pressure, I'm just going to rip that clay apart. So I'm going to push in, flatten my hands and lift, and then roll my hand over, and that helps to kind of clean up that rim there. You don't need to go super thin. I don't need to be like way thin. Okay. And then I'm going to cone it down or bring it down. That's the next step. So get the amount of clay you want and wedge it, which is also get all your stuff ready, things like that. Then it's put it on the wheel and seal it. Then it's cone it up. That's number 3. And cone it down or bring it down is number 4. Now, there's a lot of ways to do this, but I bring my right hand at 6 o'clock. My arm is at 5. My hand is at 6. I'm going to point through the center, but my pinky is pointed at an angle. So it's going to come there. I throw with a sponge so I can just squeeze out water as needed. And my left hand is going to come in on the side. Now, I created this little edge here. My left hand's not at the top and it's not at the bottom. And that edge is going to line up with my middle finger, but in the palm of my hand. So it's going to be right there. Okay? And as I do this, Then I bring my hands together. This is probably the most complex form or hand position. I'm going to start bringing this down. And as my hands move down, my left hand moves out. So I'm containing the clay. I'm telling the clay, I want you to form to my hand and move down. My fingers are not gripping this clay. And we're looking for a dome or a slightly curved hockey puck. I don't like the flat hockey puck. I just don't. There's a lot of reasons why that's not a great form. All right, we get to the bottom. So that was coning it down. We get to the bottom and it's still wobbly. So we're gonna keep in that same shape with our hands, but we're gonna refine it. So we're gonna push in at the bottom, clay moves up. Now it's really important to understand that both hands are touching the clay, but only one hand has pressure at any given time. So I'm gonna push in, my hand moves up. This is hitting the clay, so it makes this shape, but then I'm gonna press down, my hand moves out, and I'm holding or containing the clay, but I'm not pushing back. So I'm not pushing and pushing at the same time. Push in, push down, add some water, in and down, in. And we're just waiting for that clay to stop fighting us. Now, if it doesn't stop fighting us, what we've got to do is take it out of its comfort zone. And what that means is, instead of just pushing it in a little bit and down a little bit, we're going to push it in a lot, oh, I just went fast, and push it down further, back in, because clay will get in its comfort zone and it'll just kind of stay in that off-centered feel, and you've got to stretch it way out, push it back until you can line those particles up. Now, what we're trying to do is get those particles lined up in these nice flat little layers. All right, now we're going to open this. There's a bunch of ways to open this, but I like to go with my thumb of my left hand just off of the center mark. That little knob is center. And then I'm going to create a little scoop. My index finger goes on my thumb, middle finger next to it. Yes. Yeah. So 4 was, no, read them to me real quick.
4 was tone it down.
Okay, 5 is refine it. So I know it's the same hand position as cone it down, but you want to refine it. You want to make sure that that happens. Sometimes when you cone down, it centers, and it's no big deal. And so you don't have to. If you're like, oh, that's centered, you don't need to refine it. You just need to move on. So number 6 is open it down. So create a little scoop. Some people use their thumbs. Some people use just one hand. All that matters is that your hands are touching, so you're nice and supported. And I like to use my sponge. I'm going to push in and down. That way I don't have to add water. It compresses it as I go. I can stop and check that. If you don't know how to check it, just use your needle tool, stick it in there, hold your finger down, and that'll tell you how thick the bottom is. Okay, that's a little thick. Just push that down a little more. Okay, next step. I'm going to open it towards me. So I was just in this little scoop. Now I'm going to use my ring finger and middle finger, and my thumb is going to, of my left hand, my thumb is going to hold on the outside. A couple of things for you. If you're starting to get any cracking on your rim, before you open it, you're just going to gently push down with your sponge. Now, we're going to open it towards me. And this changes because if I'm making a bowl, it's gonna swoop. If I'm making a cylinder, it's gonna come out straight. Okay, and you get to choose what that is. And I'm just gonna gently pull out straight because we're making a little cylinder. There, and see how we're getting a little bit of cracking. So we're just gonna come in here and I'm just gonna stabilize it with my left hand and push down with my sponge, and that'll fix those cracks. Those cracks come from our recycled clay being short. Short meaning that the clay particles aren't bonded in long strands. Take the water out. Always, always, always. As soon as you open it up, you take the water out. I know we're just gonna add water to it, but you take the water out. All right, now we're gonna come here to the lifting portion. I use my thumb and my index finger at, here's 3 o'clock, so 4:30-ish. My thumbs are touching on the outside, and I'm gonna push with my index fingers straight across from each other. They're containing the clay, and there's a lot of ways to throw. If you throw like this, you can do it, but what'll happen is the clay's more likely to move up and out your hand to the outside, and we don't want that quite yet. So this is the next step, and it's lifting up or pulling. I'm gonna squeeze at 4:35 o'clock, elbows are down. I'm gonna push in with my right hand index finger through my thumb, or through my sponge. I'm gonna push in, and that's gonna grab the clay. Now, remember on pressure, it's more pressure at the bottom, medium pressure in the middle, light pressure at the top. So I'm gonna come right here, I'm gonna start to lift. That gives me a nice hold. I lift. And then about halfway through, I'm gonna take my right hand and tilt it inward. And true out my rim. I tilt it inward so I can keep that as a nice cylinder. I'm gonna go do that again. This time, instead of my index finger on the inside, it'll be my middle finger. Now what I just did in 2 pulls may take you 4 or 5, and that's okay. Nice and slow as we lift that up. Okay. Always and always and always, remember, we always release our hands slow. We always approach our clay slowly. If I grab my clay and then start the wheel's gonna go to my hands. The clay's gonna go to my hands, and I don't want that. So I always start the wheel and then approach my clay. And I can come in here and slowly push on, contain and manipulate that clay and keep it pretty round. But if I come in here and hit it, right, it's gonna dent that clay. But if I come in here and push on it and guide it, it'll go somewhere. Okay, so the whole purpose of the wheel is to allow us to have that clay run through our hands over and over and over as we shape it. I'm gonna clean off the bottom, this little skirt area, and this tool lines up, it goes straight down. We hold it with 2 hands. I'm gonna show you out here. You just slowly pierce that down. A lot of people will wanna come from the bottom and move in, and then it folds up. And that looks kind of like this. We come in here and it kind of like folds up, this weirdness, and we don't want that. We want to just pierce that and peel that away. This is actually where you do it, right in front of you, not out there. And then I'm going to take this off. All right, I'm going to use my metal rib. I want you practicing using your metal rib, because when we get to our projects, this helps compress the clay, this helps smooth it up, it helps take the extra slip off of it. It also can help you shape it if you use your metal rib. So you're going to come in on the side here at about 3:30, 4 o'clock, and I use the round part of my rib on a flat part of my cylinder here. If it was round, I would use the flat part of my rib. So, and it looks like this. If it went in right there, that would be 90 degrees. So I tilt it just a little bit. But it is on the edge still. What I don't want to do is get it flat, because flat will make it stick. I'm going to come in here. And then we're going to cut it. Let's fix the rib. I'm going to come halfway under and just cut straight up. And you're going to show that to me. I'm assuming you can see that. Show it to me, take pictures of it, whatever you want to do. But on this, I can tell you exactly how you're throwing by just looking at it. If this side and this side match up, you're centered. If they don't match up, you're not centered. We'll look at the bottom and see how thick it is, how flat it is, how square your sides are. We'll look at the transitioning from the bottom to the top. Does it go a little thicker to a little thinner? Or does it go really thick to really thin, or thick, thin, thick, thin? We can talk about a lot of things happening on your wheel. I don't even have to be back here. So, let's do that again. I'm gonna clean this off. Always, always, always use a wood tool, a sponge, or a towel or a paper towel to clean and dry off my wheels. Please do not use a metal tool to scrape my wheels. Let's go with a little more clay. For all or most of you, I'm going to recommend you start with 1.5 pounds of clay. So we go back to our steps. I'm sealing that. I'm not trying to get it centered. I'm just pushing down and sealing that up. The next step is I'm going to cone it up, squeeze at the bottom, lift. If you ever feel any dragging or any tearing, reduce your pressure. More, medium, light. I'm going to bring this down. Wheel speed, water content, body position, pressure. Know your steps, so know what you're trying to do from one thing to another. I'm going to refine this. Push that in. And just wait for that to kind of give you a sigh of relief. Maybe like a pat on the back. It's like, hey, Mr. Jones, good job. Way to center me. Now we're going to open this. Steady. If you open, when you open, always bend your fingers. If you use your thumbs, whatever, bend your fingers. If you come in here with flat fingers, you're going to kind of bounce around. So come in here, bent fingers, elbows down. My nose is directly above the center mark. You don't want to be like back here trying to do stuff. You're going to wobble all over the place. I'm going to pull this towards me. Nice and slow, nice and controlled. If it's centered and then you pull it towards you and wobble, it's wobbling, it's because you're pulling too fast. So you've got to slow your hand movements down. If you're getting a lot of cracking, like I am, wedge your clay longer. That'll help. You should wedge your clay like 30 or 40, 50 times. I'm like a big fan of wedging it like 10 times. for me. For you, 30 or 40, 50. That'll help compress the clay. It'll help line up the particles. All right, so we got a fairly flat bottom, pretty flat sides. We're gonna lift this up. We're gonna pinch, thumbs down on the sides. Push. Your fingers are straight across from each other. I'm gonna start to lift. Inside hand is supporting with maybe 15% of the pressure. Outside hand has more pressure. Tilt that inward. If you're still getting things that go out, it's because your inside hand has too much pressure. We're gonna come down to the bottom, or your wheel's going way too fast. I'm gonna lift this up. Feeling for what the clay is doing. Is it going thin? Is it kind of gooey? Is it responsive? That was a good pull. I like that. Pay attention. Play around with your clay. If it's been a while, if you've never, you should play around with your clay. So I'm going to come in here and rib this. I'm just supporting the inside. You're going to learn more from your failures if you're paying attention than from your successes. If you were successful, you probably aren't paying attention to the little things that are causing you problems. That doesn't mean you. What it means is you're probably not pushing very, very far. All right, let's go in here, add some water. Now, if your brain says, wait, you take the water out and then you add water, think of this as like a desert bed. If you get a quick thunderstorm, the water goes running right off the desert bed. But if you get a huge thunderstorm, it soaks in and it becomes really muddy. Anyone heard of Burning Man? Yeah. Did you see what happened out there this year? So they had a massive, massive rainstorm, and there's like jacked up Jeeps that are submerged up to their doors in mud because they're trying to get out, and it got so soggy that they couldn't get their Jeeps out or their cars, and there's just cars abandoned out there. I'm sure they're getting them out now, but if we don't take the water out, the clay absorbs our water and then it gets soggy and mushy. So make sure you're doing that. And then you add some water, because if you don't have water, then you're going to cause yourself some problems. So we're going to play with what clay. No, this clay is really, look at that, there's a hole. Really short today. So pay attention to those things. If that happens, you're going too thin, your clay is short, you could wedge it some more. I'm going to use my metal rib. I'm going to use the flat part of my metal rib so that it just wraps around. It's also compressing that clay. And now as it comes up, I'm going to use the round part because it's going to fit right up in there. Practice, practice, play. Ask some questions along the way. All kinds of crazy fun things you can do. If you learn how to make a basic shaped pot, you're 70% into making a teapot. It doesn't really matter. I can come in right now and make a lid for that. I can add a spout to that. We can add a handle on that. We could turn this into a pitcher. Come in here and add a handle right there. There's all kinds of crazy awesome things we can do. So play around. With your projects. See what we can come up with. I'm gonna use my wood rib on the bottom here instead of my wood knife because it sits underneath there real well. Now there's a solution for every problem you have. So and because I won't be here next week for your 2 classes, if there's a problem, write it down and I can cover it. Send me an email. I might be able to even answer it over an email. That's kind of cute. All right, one more and then I'm going to let you get back to your project. So on your projects, so you're making 5 or 6 small vases, right? One of the reasons why we do repetition like that is so you can get some ideas of how you want to make it better. If your project is going from good or all right to worse, your focus needs to be amped up a little bit. You need to explore and be a little bit more excited about it. So 5 to 6 small vases, 2 to 3 spouts. So this is about 6 pounds of clay. Take out that little bump right there. I really should have wedged this better. Now if I'm making a cylinder, there's a tiny wobble in it, it'll be okay. We can pull that wobble out of it. So 2 to 3 spouts, 2 to 3, 4 of those lug handles. Right? Was it more than that? I think it was about 2 to 3 or 4. You need to do some embellishments. And then what did we talk about last class period? A small demo. Do you remember what that was called? We talked about stencils and masks. So using paper stencils or masks to create images or patterns, texture, depth on your project. And you need to practice some of those. It can be anywhere from just cutting out circles and putting them on there, but if you think about a circle, you have the one you cut out and the hole where it was cut out. So the one you cut out is a mask. It masks off an area. The other is a stencil. Anyone know who Banksy is? He's a street graffiti artist. He uses stencils. So you could be the next Pottery Banksy. There's a guy named Robert Lugo who was a street artist. He's now a professional ceramic artist. Probably one of the most prolific modern ceramic artists right now. Most ceramic artists become famous in the ceramic world after they're dead or after they've been teaching for a long time. And he's in the Met, he's in other high-end galleries, getting awards. He does these graffiti pots that are super cool. I'll show you some of those someday. He's from Philadelphia. And I think that was all the, you wanna answer that? You say Mr. Jones's Clay Emporium?
He is. Are you available right now?
Who is it?
It's the art teacher from fourth floor.
From fourth floor?
The bird.
Oh, yeah, tell her I'll be right there.
He'll be right there.
Just put the phone down for a sec. Alright, so not to waste any more of your time, play around with clay. Push out, see what it does, stress about it, let it flop, don't stress about that, it's okay that it flops. And so, super quickly, next week, one of the days I expect you to be on the wheel, but you also need to finish up your hand-built project. So try that, play around with that.